Hello, members. Tom Morrison here from Nashville, Tennessee, at your home office of the Metal Trading Institute. We're here to talk about energy today. And just so you know, if you hit the chat button underneath the pictures of the videos and look there, we've enabled it for everybody to talk. If you got any questions for our guest, Michael Morin from Environ Energy, during this talk and everything in this interview, just type your questions in there. Right now, I've typed in where are people listening from. So type in there where you're listening from, and we'd love to see where you're from. So a couple things before we jump into the energy stuff. So three great resources for MTI members that are out on our website for you to take advantage of. The first one is we just created in our Work Jobs of Tomorrow video series. We created a set of template social media posts. So you and your employees, if you're looking for workers in your neck of the woods, you can take these. It's got a post, a video to link, and a picture that you can do. There's 5 of them, and you can rotate them in your local marketplace and really work to entice people to want to come into the heat treating industry and come work for your shop. So you can find those if you go to heattreat.net. And at the top, you'll see the benefits tab. Click that down, and you'll see jobs of tomorrow. And you click that, and you'll see those video posts. You can cut and paste those templates right into for your employees and you to use in your local marketplace and social media. The second thing is we just hosted our latest quarterly sales forecasting economics webcast. You'll want to go tag that out there as well. You can go out to heattreat.net and go in the members only area and look under the resources, and you'll see technical. You'll see the quarterly forecast, and you can click and you can watch a 45-minute video on it. With ITR, and you can also download the 24-page report that really unpacks the numbers for the economic forecast for the future. And we got some best practices connections. Every week we send out one question on Monday for members to answer. If you're not getting those, you'll want to email us at info@heattreat.net, and you get incredible information back on one question a week on operations and all kinds of other things, production, quality. So really good things to go on. So our goal is to give you the information you need in this fast-paced world that we live in now called heat treating. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Mr. Michael Morin from Environ Energy. Environ Energy used to be APPI Energy until they merged in, and now they got more resources to do more things for members in the world of energy. So Michael, say hello to the members out there. Tell them a little bit about who you are.
Sure. I've been in the energy industry for 30 years or so, actually a little more than that. My career has been roughly divided into thirds. I've spent a third of my time on the wholesale side of things, trading power and gas. There I really get to understand how the commodity markets work. A third of my career or so has been with suppliers, mostly selling electricity for some of the Fortune 500 companies. That was interesting because I get to learn how they look at deals, how they think, and how they price. And then I spent the last third, actually now maybe half my career, doing what I like to do best, which is help people navigate the energy markets. It's pretty clear to me that most people that I talk to hate the energy industry. It's too complicated, it's too volatile, it's too annoying. I like it. I like helping people.
Well, and that's why we're partnered with you guys to make it easy for the members to tap into. So I hope anyone listening, if you haven't given Environ Energy an opportunity to look at your energy bills and see how they can help you save money on usage, tech data points, and pricing, you need to take a look at them today, and we're going to talk about it at the very end. So, and I just asked the big question to the members, Michael. So my big question, everybody wants to know: do you watch Landman?
I do not watch Landman. I have seen the trailers. It's on my bucket list. It looks very interesting. Plus, I do like Billy Bob Thornton. But I will say I'm cheap. So I only limit myself to one subscription service at a time, and I just switch from Paramount to Peacock. When I'm done with my NBC shows, I'll go back and watch Landman.
Anybody listening in and watching, if you're not watching Landman, you have got to go check it out. It is just how the energy market works, and I've heard people say it's pretty chaotic down there in Texas, like it is. So check it out on Paramount Plus. It's a great show. They just finished season 1 a couple months ago, and they're getting ready to ramp up for season 2. So Michael, down to the nuts and bolts. So I know this is your first time on an MTI webcast. So say again, how long have you been involved in the energy markets again?
33 years.
33. So, man, you've seen a lot come and go. That is for darn sure. So, so what I want to say is we appreciate our last energy update was in January 2024, and we appreciate you and Environ coming on the webcast and really helping members. Every time I finish, I get emails from people saying these are very informative and help them really understand the landscape of what's coming up, because it's energy is one of the top 3 costs on most of our members' income statements, and so it's a big deal when markets are going up and down. And so one of the big things that happened, I know in June 1, the PJM, I guess it's PJM had a rate increase of some type, and members have been talking about that. So can you kind of unpack that a little bit? What's been going on there?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of start and set the table with a little overview of what goes into an electricity price.
Absolutely.
Because
I think that'd be good to help everybody. Everybody thinks it's just the energy, right? The cost of it, right?
yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. So I have some pictures. I'm not big on words, although this slide does have a few words, but mostly I like pictures, so you'll see some of that. Um, so when you get an electricity price, and they vary by the country, or where you are in the country, by state, by utility. This is somebody in Pennsylvania. And again, within that same utility, there could be a big difference in price depending on how you use electricity. Uh, but most people don't realize that there's a bunch of different things that go into this price quote that they get for electricity. So there's this other bucket. This is all the minor stuff that was needed to keep the grid running reliably. If you flip the light switch, you want the lights to come on. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to do that. Um, most states, all states, require all deregulated states require suppliers to buy and resell renewable energy to your end users. That cost can be very expensive in states like Massachusetts or very minor in other states, but it is a cost that we need to factor in. Transmission is another big cost, and if you're in the PJM area, that is a big thing this day. And this is your cost of using the transmission grid. So that if you're in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or other states, except for Ohio, you have to pay for this as a separate line item or as part of your supply costs. And then capacity, this is what you were alluding to in PJM. This is the ability to produce electricity, but not actually any energy at all. So all these other components go into your price, along with what most people think the price represents, which is the cost to make the stuff. But that's only half the cost in this case. Sometimes it's a third of the cost, sometimes it's two-thirds of the cost. There's a lot of other stuff that goes in there. I'd like to start with a slide like this. One, to let you know that when you're out there contracting, you can include some of these costs or not. And we actually take a lot of time and effort to do what we call component management. Sometimes it's good to lock these in your price. Other times it's not. And we help you manage and optimize those costs. So going back to the capacity market that we talked about, or we switched gears here. So the markets as a whole have been kind of ho-hum. In January 24, you came off a very chaotic year with the Russian war. Last year, prices were kind of ho-hum. They went up, they went down, but were relatively stable for, this is gas prices, at $3 a decatherm. This past year has been different. It started in the winter with the cold weather. We had cause a big price increase, and then a mild summer. A mild spring. On top of that, the tariffs have impacted us. It created economic uncertainty, slowed down the economy.
So is that the only, is it the uncertainty or a physical cost that tariffs are bearing in?
Right now, it's more the slowing down. I guess probably the better way to describe this is economics 101. There's a supply demand equation that drives most of the market.
Right.
The more supply we have, the lower the prices. The more demand we have, the higher the prices. So the amount of generation we have, whether we're building new plants or retiring plants, how much gas we're producing, what our storage levels for natural gas are, all that is the supply piece of the puzzle. And then on the demand side, it's weather and the economy. But there are other things that impact pricing. Fear, risk, speculators, all that kind of emotional stuff.
Right.
So uncertainty is one of those that fits in that bucket. And then there's regulatory and legal changes that create fear or risk or change the supply picture.
So can you go back to the slide right before that? I had a question on that.
Yeah.
So on these things that make up the cost, are those all are the things on top of the energy cost, are they fixed or do they change on time? Or are they a percent of the price? How are those typically structured?
So the other bucket is fairly stable. It generally increases over time in most circumstances. On occasion, um, there's spikes and temporary spikes typically in those costs. We are having one right now in New England. We just went through one in Baltimore Gas and Electric in Delmarva, in pockets of the PJM area. But for the most part, that's a fairly stable cost. The renewable energy, for the most part, is always increasing. And every so often, the state changes the law, say, hey, we need to go greener faster, and those can spike up. Transmission, it's always going up. And capacity, that one is just went up a lot. That's the big price increase. I actually have a slide on that. Um, that one went up a lot just recently. And then energy, that's the one that's most volatile. It flies up and down with
Right.
the commodity markets. It's what we're looking at here.
So when you talk about transmission stuff, is that related obviously to the grid?
Yeah, so I'm a little cynical about these markets. And I'm cynical about the government and I'm cynical about the politicians
Who's
and the
not?
that run all this. So I hopefully I have a good audience here for me, but um, one thing that has happened over time is the utilities were regulated for many years and still
Sure.
regulated in the states. When they decided to have competition, they had to sell off their power plants and allow other people to provide the energy to the grid and to customers. Utilities made their money via regulated rates, and they're roughly speaking, they're allowed to recover all their cost plus a profit, a return on their investment on their assets.
Is that regulated?
That's the regulated model.
But I
You know,
mean, do they regulate the profit amount that they can make though?
yes, I mean they argue whether a 9% or 10% or rate of return is fair, but we're talking, it's sort of like a fairly safe bond is how most utilities were looked at, and that's why they were good income investments.
Right.
But when they deregulated, they sold all their power plants, so their asset base went away, so the amount of profit they could make got reduced.
Right.
So in my cynical opinion, are making up for it by building the heck out of the transmission grid and getting a profit on that.
Sure.
And
So
that's a
everybody,
real issue in PJM right now.
well, a lot of people talk about the grid. So what shape is the grid in? I mean, is it improving, better technology?
Um, I'd say it's kind of in shambles right now. We have added a lot of new renewable energy that's not necessarily reliable. We have built things that we thought were reliable. In New England, for example, we relied on one fuel, natural gas. We don't have enough pipeline space to get the gas-fired gas to the power plants in the wintertime. That's a big mistake.
Yeah.
Texas, they built a bunch of power plants fueled with gas, and guess what? When it's cold, they freeze. They don't work. That caused a big price spike in Texas a few years ago. Every region has its problems. California has its problems with wildfires, too much solar, you name it. Um, it's going to take some time to right size things. And on the same vein, the amount of demand going in is increasing rapidly, particularly related to data centers and artificial intelligence
Oh
needs.
yeah. So I just gave a keynote at a conference a couple of days ago, and there's an interesting fact that if you can look it up if you want it on ChatGPT, but they're saying that artificial intelligence is going to grow. Hear me out on this, members. This is a huge number. It's going to grow 37 just between now and 2030. It's going to grow 37% a year compounded annually. So it's going to be like 20 times larger than it is today. And that is incredible. You talk about growth of data centers and the growth of AI. I mean, that anybody would like their business to grow 37% compounded annually.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure about that. And well, let's talk about what happened in PJM for just a second, and then we can,
Sure.
because data centers are the driver of that. So going back to our price components chart, maybe you have heard the cost for capacity in the PJM area went up dramatically on June 1st. So backing up a second, what goes into this price? It's an auction. PJM, the power pool that runs the grid, Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, but also includes Virginia, Illinois, Ohio, so on and so forth. They run an auction. And first, they need to know how much capacity they need. So it's a forecast. I use that term
Right.
kind of italicized because it factored in all these data centers that were supposed to be built. They also need all the supply, all the power plants, and then this demand response and other little minor things can play in this market. That's your supply of capacity. And the third thing is the rules of the auction. So it's supply, demand, and how are we going to play in this auction? And the rules, everything changed on this last auction. The data centers, as we mentioned, added a lot to the demand, mostly in Northern Virginia, but they're all over the place. Texas is another area that's getting constrained by data centers. We also retired a lot of coal plants, and they changed the rules. There's a whole bunch of nuances to this, but one of the big ones is the renewable energy that we had all of a sudden was kind of counted less. So we had less supply in this auction, and that created a major price spike. The cost for capacity last year for all this entire region was a little over $2 billion. Now it's going to be close to $15 billion.
Wow, 7 times. That's crazy.
So data centers and the change in the rules were the big drivers. Now, on the data center front, I'm a little suspicious. I mean, if you're our age, right, we've been through the dot-com bubbles. We saw the financial crisis of 2008. We've seen the OPEC oil crisis. You name it, we've seen bubbles and bursting of bubbles. Data center might be one of those. I was talking to some friends of mine that manage the energy for Meta, Facebook,
Hmm.
and their own analysis indicates that all the data centers to be built or are supposed to be built in Northern Virginia, there's not enough labor to build them. So they
Oh,
don't think that's going to happen.
right.
So we may be in a situation where this forecast demand is totally wrong, and you guys, everybody here is paying for this mistake because the demand won't show up.
Well, the big challenge is every industry, even heat treaters, every industry is challenged with that. There's industries I've talked in the construction that could grow 20% if they just had enough workers to push the throughput through, and that, I think everybody's suffering from that.
Yeah, 37% annual increase in the demand for data centers. I don't know. I mean, probably for a period of time, but I suspect this might be a big bubble waiting to happen, but we shall see.
So we talked about what's happened since up to 2025. So the next 6, 12, 20. I mean, what's the horizon look like out? That's because that's what everybody we all are smiling about what is. Now let's talk about what's coming. So how's the future here looking for natural gas and electricity?
Uh, that is a great question because I like to look at the market in chunks, and typically it's 6, 12, 24, and beyond.
I thought you were
Um,
going to say that's a great question because I just don't know.
no, well, so yeah, I don't know, but I have some insights, and that's actually kind of my theme here. So backing up a second, if you're buying energy, there's a whole bunch of things, if you want to do it well, you need to factor in. One of those things that I think is important is where are prices today relative to where they have been, right?
Yeah, sure.
Everybody wants a deal. They want prices to be low. That's important, but that's not the whole story. Just because prices may be low relative to where they've been the last 3, 5 years, it's a good indicator that you want to do something, lock up something, but maybe not. And the same thing is true if prices are really high relative to the last few years. Most people think I don't want to do anything. But maybe if the outlook is different, you want to do something. So where the prices are relative to history is kind of important. And when I say prices, I mean the energy price, that one bottom component of our
Right.
chart. Most people confuse the two and they look at the total price. And if you do that, you factor in things like capacity, all these other charges that are outside of your control, outside of the normal commodity market trading, and it can give you bad decisions. That's why we do a lot of component management, so we can isolate the energy component itself. The more important factor, this leads to your question, I think, is not where we are relative to history. That is important, but where is this market going? If you're going to make a decision, have a real sound, well thought out market outlook. Because if prices are low, but everything that you're looking at says it's going to go lower, you want to wait, you want to go shorter term, something like that. If the prices are high and everything says it's going to continue to go up, you want to maybe go long term, buy now. So what we're looking at for risk factors is there's a few doozies. I got some more pictures.
So let's do this. Before we get into that, let's stay stuck on the price and the different areas of price. So what is, as people are listening in, what are some key people that don't work with Environ through MTI? What are some key questions they need to be asking their broker or their energy person who works with them on the energy? What's some key questions they should be asking?
Ask them what their outlook of the market is and see if they can walk through a logical explanation of what they see happening next. Unfortunately, most of the folks in this space, if you're working with a broker or a consultant, a lot of them, it's the sky is falling, due 5 years. But see if they have a good rationale for that. That's one thing you can do. If you're working directly with the supplier, I was one of those. I will tell you as a salesperson, I will steer you to products in terms that I know I'm competitive in. So it's a little tougher, and these people are in the know. Ideally, you get yourself a good advisor.
All right, so back now to the risk factors.
Supply demand. We talked about weather. This is the driver. This is the summer. This is NOAA's map. It's a 3-month forecast. It was done in mid-May, so I take that with a grain of salt. But this is pretty red. And this is about as red as I've seen. So I'm kind of convinced that this summer is going to be warmer than normal. Warmer than normal means more air conditioning load, more demand for electricity, more demand for natural gas to make the electricity. That's a classic supply-demand crunch. The weather is very, very bullish for this market. The next period we look at is the next season, the winter. I don't know much about that one. It could be hot, it could be cold. But if you need to, your electricity contract expires at the end of this year, early next year, you should probably do something sooner rather than later. But the bigger, longer term risk that is worrying most of us is liquefied natural gas exports. We take a lot of our gas, all the shale gas that we're producing in the Appalachian and in Texas, we cool it down to a liquid. We put it on a special tanker and we send it to China, Japan, Europe, South America, all over the place. For several years, we've been fairly consistent sending out about 14. I mean, the actual production, the blue line varies. There's been fires and things breaking down, but our capacity is around 14 billion cubic feet per day. We'll talk about what that means. But we just added a new facility at the end of last year to increase our export capabilities. We actually just finished adding another one in the last quarter. That's this bump up. And we will add another one. So by September of 26, we'll be able to send out about 4.5 billion cubic feet more per day than we could have last year and the year before and the year before.
That's a lot.
To put that in perspective, 4.5 billion cubic feet per day, that's about 4%, 4.5% of our total demand from the US. Over the course of 365 days, that works out to be 1.5 trillion cubic feet of gas. Everybody looks at these storage maps. If we have a great year, we get to 4,000 BCF or 4 trillion cubic feet. A bad year is we're at 3.5. Somehow we have to find 1.5 trillion cubic feet. So if we get to 4 normally, but we send out 1.5 out the door, we're at 2.5. This is a major potential change in our energy infrastructure. It could go overseas. This is a supply shock waiting to happen. This is what concerns me the most over the next year and a half.
So do we have the supply available and we're just not tapping it, or
Um, so to get new gas production, you have to drill wells. Um, so it's in the ground. We have to find it. I mean, they probably know where it is, and we have to drill for it. The major producers have indicated they are not willing to produce any more this year materially. They're willing to grow a little bit, replace the stuff that's drying out, but they're not majorly doing any capital expenditures to increase drilling this year. We monitor their earnings calls, and the Q1s confirm that. However, it did actually indicate that they are planning a major increase in capital spending in 2027. So for years, they drilled to get market share. They lost money. Now they've strengthened their balance sheets and are focused on putting a return to shareholders. So they're holding the line. But we think in 27, we could see new gas production come online, and we're going to need it.
so are there any other seasonal factors that are impacting demand? I know you mentioned potentially hot summer. Are they predicting a cold winter? I mean, what are their projections for the rest of this year?
The winter is right now it's maybe above normal in the south. I guess that's a help. But I mean it's June, right? We haven't even got through the summer.
Right.
Um, the probably the I just gave a bunch of bad news, but there is some good. Well, I don't know. It's
I knew you would come through for us, Michael, with
yeah,
some good news.
yeah, Tom, if we have a real bad recession, energy prices will go down. That's the good news, right? I mean, that's where we're at. And that means your members are hurting. We just don't have the infrastructure yet. Um, so I am very bullish on prices for the next year or so. And then in 2027, I think we might see some relief, but relief from what? If we go up 30, 40%, that might not be much relief.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about geopolitical factors. Is there anything else internationally, conflicts, supply chain disruptions? Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you feel like is important to mention as the impact energy prices?
Well, yeah. So with the advent of the LNG exports, our US market has now become globalized. We've seen that in other markets, like crude oil, for example. Yesterday was a great example. The US announced that they are pulling back embassy personnel in Middle East because of tensions in that region. Oil went up $3 a barrel. So that's the type of thing that can move the market rather significantly.
Right.
We are so coupled with the international market now, and especially after we add more LNG, that the US market, which used to be driven by our weather, our gas supply, is now globalized. So if something happens in China, a cold winter, that will impact our prices because we will send more gas over there and have less here. If something happens, say a war in Ukraine or Russia, and demand for the supply of natural gas is cut in Europe, they're going to want our gas. Causes a price spike. We saw that a couple years ago. In New England, the one region that is the most linked to Europe, prices in some utilities hit 50 cents a kilowatt hour for supply because of the war.
Right.
So there's some significant risks. The tariff are a big issue. We import a lot of energy from Canada. That right now is going to be a more regional impact. So if you're in Michigan or New York or my home state, Maine, parts of Maine are not even connected to the United States. They buy it all from Canada. They're going to pay 25% more. End of story. This tariff situation could escalate. Canada has threatened, or some of the prime ministers have threatened to cut off exports to us. Just that threat spooked the markets.
Right.
Might not have the supply there. If they actually cut it off, I can't even think what that one's going to do, but it's a big risk.
Well,
Uh,
man, being global as an economy, it helps open up markets, helps people sell stuff overseas, increase sales and stuff. But you used to get to wake up and watch just the U.S. news or your own country's news, and that's what you were affected by. But nowadays, as a business owner, you got to keep abreast of what's going on pretty much around the world, so you can get ahead of the change or markets that are impacting your company's ability to buy energy and a host of other things.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, people that hated to buy energy, they really hate it now because before you could at least look at the Wall Street Journal and say, oh, prices are doing this, or look at the local weather, or watch Al Roker,
Yeah,
to get a gist of what energy was going to do. No longer.
right.
There's so many different variables, and there's a lot of regional specifics. We are seeing California's market get upended by solar, um, and we are seeing Texas market having a sea change in how that market works. We're actually creating new ways to buy energy in response to those changes. And
Right.
I suspect that New England and New York will follow us suit as well.
So let's shift gears a little bit. So a lot of our members, um, decarbonization and sustainability is a huge thing in the world. It hasn't been as much here in the U.S. There was a big push in it for the longest time, and now it seems to be curtailing back. And I think at our last meeting, we had a lot of people talk about decarbonization and what does it mean, and a lot of people in America are not they're not walking forward with it because it's not as big a push in it now. But what is happening though is a lot of our members do business with OEMs that are overseas, and those OEMs are definitely pushing the sustainability and decarbonization atmosphere because it's big in their world. So how does that impact in the world of energy from your perspective?
Well, one nice thing about the APPI evolution into Environ is there are a lot more resources. APPI and the company I came out of was primarily focused on energy consulting, helping people buy energy. Environ actually has one third of its business on the sustainability front. So if you need help with that, if you the carbon accounting comes in two flavors, if you will. There's doing the inventory, how much greenhouse gas did I emit? Sort of like the accounting piece of the puzzle. We do that for scope one, two, and three emissions. The other piece of the puzzle is the assurance. We call it assurance. That's like the auditors that come in. So if you say I did this much carbon, somebody's got to verify your claims.
Right.
We do both pieces of the puzzle. Because of the rules, you have to be the one company that does accounting can't do the auditing, if you will. We actually have two different companies that are completely separated legally, structurally, people-wise, and technology-wise. We have a firewall. So if you need that help or your members need that help, we actually can do one-stop shopping. We do various levels of carbon inventorying and assurance for OEMs that say, hey, how much carbon goes into this product? What's your scope one, two, or three? Those are usually easier. There's like lighter lifts, if you will, to do that. And we help our clients with that all the time. In fact, we do this in about 100 different countries right now because of the globalization of our clients. Uh, if you really get into it, like if you are owned by a European company, we can actually help you with the various Europe or state-based regulatory reporting requirements that are much more rigorous. And then we have sustainability planning, goal setting, to help become more green, engineering services if you need it. But there is no doubt about it that the push to go green has definitely slowed down in the last year.
Right. So one of our members asked, so what about all the renewables? Is there any move in that area? But one of our members specifically asked in the chat box, what about nuclear? Is there any move to go nuclear to make up for some of the shortfall potentially? And how long does something like that take if they were to even start running that direction?
Um, there is some push to go nuclear. We are seeing some pockets of that, but like everything in this country, the NIMBY, not in my backyard syndrome, kind of takes over.
Right.
Everybody wants this, that, and the other thing, but they don't want it in their yard. Everybody wants wind power, offshore wind, unless you're the Kennedys and it's off your island. They don't want that. If you nobody wants,
No
they
one,
want
no one,
renewable
no
energy for,
one, no one wants a giant fan in their backyard.
yeah, exactly. So we want wind power, but we don't want to kill our birds. You kill birds in Texas. I mean, it's a never-ending saga.
I think it'd make a great Ferris wheel.
So I suspect that building nuclear power plants is going to be tough. Protesters can tie things up. That is one of the problems with this country, is the permitting and the lawsuits can delay things and add billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
So I'm cautiously optimistic, but cold fusion or some other technology may actually be an answer.
Awesome. So let me ask you something. So now that we talked about all those intangible things and some of them tangible, what members want to know in a lot of cases, what do I do today? Looking at the future, looking at all the things we talked about, what are some pricing strategies members should be thinking through, asking questions about with their brokers or suppliers or with Environ to get the best thing they can to be competitive today?
Uh, you need to have a strategy and you got to be proactive. The days of just doing this at the end of the contract don't pay off. If you are proactive, like if you did a long-term deal in February, March of 2020, you did very well. We had the prices were depressed because of COVID. So don't be afraid to pull the trigger early, but have a plan. At the end of the day, I talked about all these factors that might influence the market, but I don't have a clue. Like you said it, you don't know what's going to go on, right? And I don't. I have pretty good guesses, but I could be wrong. So one of the things that we've developed is a way to buy energy differently. Um, let me show you how that looks. I got a couple graphics on that. Uh, there's a concept called layered hedging, and I'd say the last 5 years, depending on the year, 60 to 90% of the energy that we manage for our clients use this type of strategic approach to buying energy. And what it is you start out with some sort of fixed adder for some or all of those buckets that we talked about in the price components chart. It doesn't include the energy. You have the ability to lock in that energy over time, or if you want, buy it on the spot market. So that's the concept of the original deal. But what we encourage our clients to do is watch the market, and when we see buying opportunities, do what we call a hedge. This isn't a financial hedge, so you don't have to worry about accounting rules. But do a purchase, 25% of your needs. And as the market goes up and down, gradually take pieces of the puzzle out. And if you want, you get to a fixed price. You just get there differently over time using a dollar cost averaging approach. This type of concept has been around for a while, but it really requires a lot of tools and resources to do this. We have those tools. Every time I mention this to somebody, the first reaction I get is, I don't have that kind of time. This sounds too complicated. But my experience is once you try it, because we do all the heavy lifting, it actually makes your decision-making process easier. One simple thing is instead of deciding today I'm going to buy fixed price for 5 years, the whole enchilada, you're just making small decisions, a series of small decisions over time. That helps you sleep better at night. You're always in the marketplace. You're never subject to being the extreme high, but you're not going to get the extreme low with this approach either. So that kind of concept has really proven to lower costs for our clients. And it requires being proactive and it requires some help.
Awesome. Well, so to kind of come around turn four, is there anything that you feel like we haven't talked or asked a question about that you think is important for members to know moving forward from today?
Well, have a strategy because it's energy's been complicated for years and it's going to get a lot more complicated over the next few years. Number one. Number two, there's different things I've noticed that some folks can do to lower their costs. It depends where you are and how your plan operates. Shedding load during peak times is one way. You can reduce your capacity costs. You can lower your energy costs in some cases. Admittedly, for heat treating clients, that is a lot more difficult, but it can be done. We work with a hip plant in Massachusetts that sometimes has runs that are 7 or 10 days long. We just do a lot more collaboration with them. We look at a week-long forecast and we help them manage their schedule so they can cut their costs. And they've been able to cut that capacity component of 30 to 50% most years. So it's possible, but it requires some customized action. We're willing to put in the calories to help you figure that out.
Awesome. Well, members, here's the key thing. Michael, appreciate all you've given us today. So, members, here's the key thing. Make sure you ask if you're not working with Environ with MTI, make sure you ask your brokers and your suppliers the right questions as he's talked about. But if you'd like to just take a look and see what would this look like if we were tapped into Environ, you can go out to MTI's website, heattreat.net, and click on the industry support team link at the top, industry support team. And that list is all the consultants you can tap into for services, and one of them is Environ Energy, and it's Catherine Allen, and her email address is right there. You can email her your last. Michael, what would they want to do? Would they just want to send a note to? There you go. They've even got a personalized email address for us. I forgot about that. So, Michael, what would they do? Send a general email to your team, or would they want to include 1 or 2 months bills for them to take a look at?
A general email is fine. If you have one recent bill for your electric or your gas or both accounts, that would be helpful. But we'll reach out. It's such a customized solution for everybody. I can't tell you this is what you need to do. Just start talking to us. We'll guide you through this.
Awesome. Yeah. Here's the thing I love is, as my wife always says to me, it's free to ask. So you might as well at least check and see where your current supplier is, and you might find out you might want to be in the environment with MTI. So, well, members, Michael, thank you so much for today. Members, thank you for being members of MTI and tuning in today. We have our next live webcast on July 1st on the technical standards updates. We look forward to seeing you there. So you're not just strong, friends, you're MTI strong. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Tom.